Since the 1970s, the United States have encountered environmental and energy crisis. As time goes by, the country has started to revive due to globalization, but United States faced terrorism in the early 21st century. The two events ushered in a period of decline in the United States, but during this situation of tumult, conservative politics later in the 1980s plays a role during the process. In the 1970s, both energy crisis and environmental crisis posed threats to the United States. Energy crisis posed a big threat to the United States during the 1970s due to higher consumption of energy sources, the insufficient amount of energy supply source available, and the failure of the country linked to the crisis. During 1776 to 2006, the highest energy sources are petroleum, natural gas, and coal. In 1970s, petroleum's energy consumption reaches up to 33 quadrillion British thermal units, while both the energy consumption of natural gas and coal reaches up to approximately 20 quadrillion BTU and 10 quadrillion BTU respectively. Meanwhile, hydroelectric power, which is produced by water during that time, reaches only 5 quadrillion BTU. This energy consumption will grow more and more over the years. The country has limited supply but unlimited demand of energy supply. In the 1960s, the amount of oil was supposed to be 60 billion barrels of oil, but in the 1970s, the amount decreased to about 25 billion barrels of oil. Since petroleum was extracted from oil, it is important that the oil level was sufficient enough to sustain energy. As a consequence, the country has been dependent on imports of crude oil since the beginning of 1970s. In fact, United States depended more on imports of crude oil than its production, starting from 1970, as its production kept plunging over the years. Furthermore, energy crisis as well as the environmental crisis affected the general welfare of the country. President Nixon said that the country should bring in products more from abroad in order to meet their energy needs, and they should work out problems with the Mid-Eastern countries to ensure flow of imports of oil products to the country. However, gas and oil were also running out. The country should usually conserve it and use renewable sources of energy such as solar power. The country has been wasting more energy than the one being imported, and the oil consumption would still be going up no matter what. Jimmy Carter said that 6 years ago we paid $3.7 billion for imported oil. Last year we spent $37 billion, and this year we may spend over $45 billion. Unless we act, we will spend more than $550 billion for imported oil by 1985. And by then, the United States will not be able to import oil from another country at any acceptable rate. When that happens, people will lose their jobs. Not only an economic crisis will tag along, but also the social and political crisis. In the presidential candidacy, Ronald Reagan mentioned that in order to restore the economic health during the time, the country needed to cut tax and get the waste out of federal spending, since the federal government has been proven to be the costliest and most inefficient. In regards to the energy crisis, people believe that using more self-sustaining and recyclable energy will be a solution, such as solar energy. Meanwhile, Reagan addressed the solution of having more production domestically of oil and gas, usage of water use of nuclear power within strict safety rules, and more spending by energy industries on research and development of substitutes for fossil fuels. And it was time to strengthen the bonds with neighboring countries such as Canada and Mexico, and become partners with them to sit on high-level planning sessions with people of America to talk about the future of their continent for the common good of people. He mentioned that government should once again be the protection of people's liberties, to work alongside the Americans in finding solutions to the 1970s crisis. Meanwhile, as time goes by, entering the 21st century, the economy of the country is getting better thanks to globalization. Because of globalization, the U.S. economy revives since trade barrier was lifted and the trade was open economy. The prosperity of the country makes it becoming the world's economic leader. World Trade Center is the major financial center, but it goes all back to ground zero when terrorism of September 11th attacked. The terrorism was facilitated by globalization, unfortunately, such as the technologies as well as the open economies. Osama bin Laden declared war against the United States in February 1998. He said that we are certain that we shall, with the grace of Allah, prevail over the Americans, could overcome a superpower. The Americans will never forget the day that the Twin Towers of World Trade Center crashed by planes hijacked by the Al-Qaeda. Whatever the witness in the CIA's portraitor, both Presidents Bill Clinton and George Bush knew that bin Laden was a danger, but they didn't fully understand just how many people Al-Qaeda might kill and how soon it might do it. The threat had not yet become compelling. They never predicted how hijacked aircraft could be used as a weapon. They did not see suicide terrorism coming. Before 9/11, no agency had more responsibility to attack Al-Qaeda than the CIA. But there were limits to what CIA was able to do. Military measures failed and were not applied. Before 9/11, the Department of Defense was not given the missions of ending Al-Qaeda sanctuary in Afghanistan. Government's ability to collect intelligence inside the U.S. and sharing of such info between the intelligence and law enforcement communities was not a priority before 9/11. There was a wall, indeed, on information sharing between the intelligence and those communities. However, after the 9/11 happened, the President implemented the Patriot Act to remove the wall. The President also tasked principals to go beyond their pre-9/11 work and develop a strategy to eliminate terrorists and punish those who support them. The United States partnered with Pakistan to provide intelligence information. Killing bin Laden would have an impact, but wouldn't necessarily stop the threat. The only way to deal with the threat was to end Al-Qaeda's ability to use Afghanistan as a sanctuary for its operations. However, before all this situation of tumult happened, in 1981, during the inaugural, President Ronald Reagan assured Americans to strengthen their historic ties the United States have with allies that shared the freedom, and to remind those who are enemies of freedom to negotiate for peace, sacrifice for it, but not surrender for it, now or never. To preserve United States national security, Reagan said, "We will act to maintain sufficient strength to prevail if need be." Defense is not just another budget expense. Reagan spent on defense to the bare minimum. The federal government has a duty of keeping America strong, free, and at peace. To keep the country strong is prominent to the national security. To make the country prosper, it should have an ever-expanding American economy that is free. He believes as globalization resumes, the same technology that transforms people's lives can solve the greatest problem of the 20th century and so on. A security shield can one day render nuclear weapons obsolete and free mankind from the prison of nuclear terror. America dreamed of going to the moon, then later went to the moon. Now, America must meet another challenge to make a strategic defense real for all citizens of Earth. The act of terrorism left people in despair. Regions have longed for a free world at peace for generations to come. This is why he kept good connections with the leader of Soviet Union, Mr. Gorbachev, in hope of making a more stable relationship, friendship, and peace. All in all, both the crisis of the 1970s and the early 21st century globalization, terrorism, region wanted Americans to work alongside with the government to prevent and tackle the problems they need to deal with. Both events, however, resulted in a period of decline in the United States.